The day space went quiet. For a brief moment, the universe stopped talking. No warning, no explosion. Just silence where signals should have been. And on Earth, nobody understood what that silence meant. To understand why this moment still matters today, we need to revisit an era when space felt limitless. During the height of exploration, humanity believed technology could overcome any distance. Antennas stretched across continents. Satellites filled orbit. Every second, data poured down from the sky, proving we were no longer alone in the universe's vastness. Space was noisy, alive with constant communication. That confidence still shapes how we think today. We rely on satellites for navigation, weather, defense, and global connection. Entire economies depend on uninterrupted signals from above. We assume space will always answer when we call. But that assumption was tested on a single day when the signals vanished. At first, it looked like a routine disruption. Engineers blamed solar interference. Controllers checked ground equipment. Backup systems were activated without concern. These things happened before, and they were always temporary. Space, after all, was unpredictable, but manageable. But then the silence spread. One by one, transmissions faded. Not just from a single craft, but across multiple channels. Telemetry froze mid-sentence. Instruments kept recording, but nothing came back. It was as if a curtain had fallen between Earth and everything beyond it. Inside control rooms, voices lowered. Screens refreshed endlessly. Every possible explanation was tested and discarded. The math still worked. The hardware still functioned. Yet the universe refused to respond. This was not a failure of machines. It was something far more unsettling. For the first time, humanity faced a terrifying question. What happens when space itself goes quiet? As the silence stretched from minutes into hours, the certainty inside mission control slowly began to erode. Because nothing in decades of spaceflight history behaved like this. Signal loss usually left fingerprints, distortion, echoes, fragments of data. But this disappearance was precise, complete, and unnervingly clean, as if someone had deliberately erased the connection between Earth and orbit. Engineers worked through every familiar explanation with growing urgency, running diagnostics, swapping antennas, rerouting power, and checking redundant systems that had never failed before. Nothing changed. Different spacecraft built by different teams, launched in different years, all went quiet within the same narrow window of time. And that coincidence transformed a technical anomaly into something far more disturbing. Attention quickly turned to the sun, long known as the invisible disruptor of human technology, capable of knocking out grids and scrambling signals with little warning, but the data refused to cooperate with that theory. Solar activity was calm, almost peaceful, offering no storms, no flares, no energetic bursts strong enough to justify what was happening. The universe, at least on paper, looked perfectly normal. With familiar explanations exhausted, speculation drifted outward into deeper, darker territory. Uncharted radiation fields, rare cosmic alignments, phenomena predicted by equations but never observed directly. Each idea sounded increasingly abstract, yet none could be dismissed outright, because the silence itself had already broken every assumption engineers relied on. While experts debated, the consequences quietly rippled across Earth. Navigation systems lost precision. Time synchronization began to drift by fractions that most people would never notice, but modern civilization depends on. The world kept moving, unaware that its invisible scaffolding was weakening in real time. What unsettled controllers most was not the loss of data, but the loss of certainty. Space had always been distant and dangerous, but it was also dependable in one crucial way. It answered back. And now, with no warning and no explanation, that conversation had ended, leaving humanity to wonder whether the silence was a temporary failure or the first sign of something fundamentally different. As hours turned into an unbroken stretch of uncertainty, the silence stopped feeling like a technical problem and began to feel like a boundary humanity had never crossed before, because every system designed to listen into the void was still working, yet nothing was coming back. Controllers replayed historical failures, famous near disasters, and long-forgotten anomalies, searching for reassurance that this moment fit an old pattern. But the comparisons only deepened the unease, since every past crisis had left behind traces, clues, or at least noise. The growing fear was not that something had gone wrong, but that something had gone right in a way no one anticipated. Spacecraft were stable, orbits held. Instruments continued collecting information as if nothing had changed, quietly observing a universe that refused to acknowledge Earth's presence. It was as though humanity had become a listener in a room where the speaker had suddenly decided to stop responding. Behind closed doors, conversation shifted from engineering to philosophy. For decades, space exploration rested on a simple belief that the universe might be vast and indifferent, but it was predictable. Laws governed motion, energy, and time, and as long as those laws held, communication was merely a matter of distance and patience. The silence challenged that belief, suggesting that predictability itself might have limits. As theories grew darker, so did the implications. If space could abruptly block communication, then every mission beyond low Earth orbit was more fragile than anyone admitted. Astronauts depended on a constant stream of guidance and reassurance from home. Probes carried humanity's questions across billions of kilometers with the promise they would one day answer back. Without that return signal, exploration became isolation. What made the moment unbearable was the lack of a clear enemy. There was no explosion to mourn, no wreckage to analyze, no villain to blame. Just an invisible shift that had severed the most important thread connecting Earth to the cosmos. The silence was not dramatic, but it was absolute, and with each passing minute, it forced a realization that felt heavier than any mechanical failure. Humanity had always imagined space as something to conquer, measure, and understand. Yet now it felt like space was quietly reminding us of our position. Small, dependent, vulnerable, and standing at the edge of a universe that did not owe us an explanation. The turning point came when analysts finally accepted what the data had been implying all along, that this silence was not spreading, not escalating, and not behaving like a catastrophe at all. It had stabilized. Whatever had happened, the universe had settled into a new, quiet equilibrium, leaving Earth cut off but not destroyed, isolated but still watching. That realization was almost more unsettling than panic, because it suggested permanence. Space had not lashed out in violence. It had simply closed a door. Missions were not lost in fire or collision, but in relevance, reduced to silent observers drifting through trajectories they could no longer explain or adjust. Humanity had built machines to shout into the void, assuming the void would always echo back. And now that assumption lay exposed. In the months that followed, communication slowly returned, piece by fragile piece, but the psychological damage lingered far longer than the outage itself. Engineers rewrote protocols. Agencies redesigned systems with layers of redundancy never imagined before. Philosophers and scientists alike debated what the silence truly represented, not as a malfunction, but as a warning about overconfidence. The event forced a reckoning. Modern civilization had grown dependent on space without fully respecting its unpredictability. Navigation, security, climate monitoring, and global communication all rested on a fragile conversation with orbit. When that conversation stopped, even briefly, it revealed how thin the line was between control and chaos. Today, as humanity prepares to return to the moon and reach toward Mars, the memory of that quiet moment still shapes every decision. The lesson was not that space is cruel, or even hostile, but that it is indifferent in ways we are still learning to understand. Silence, it turns out, can be just as powerful as noise. Subscribe to join the journey.